So guys, the Riddler Year One, Issue 6, the very final issue is here. So of course, what I'm going to do is go throughout the events of the final issue, recap it, break down some of the stuff that we see. And I have to say, this issue does a great job with teasing some of the things that we actually haven't seen before in the movie, such as some more of the Arkham space. And we truly get to see what Riddler was doing in the very morning and day of Thursday, October 31st, before he went to go kill the mayor and, well, everything else that he did in the movie. So really interesting stuff in this issue if you're a fan of the Batman, and even if you're only just watching this issue, this breakdown, I'm sure you will enjoy it, getting right into the canonical events of what happened in that very day, that very morning of Halloween at the beginning of the movie. So if you do go on to enjoy it, I'd really appreciate a like, and do consider subscribing for more future Batverse content like this. So the issue picks up with Anna June hearing a couple of knocks at the door, and she answers, but nobody is there. However, there is a letter on the floor with Riddler's logo. Now, just in case you forgot who Anna June is, or Anna June, I don't think it's the same Annika in the movie, given what we're about to get into. Now, she is the daughter of the late Mr. June, of whom got killed after Mr. Stone, of whom is Edward's boss at KTMJ, of whom really works for Falcone, ordered his death after thinking he'd been skimming money from the Tri-Corner businesses, and basically those are businesses that Falcone owns, such as New Beginnings, Animal Rescue, and a bunch of other ones. Now, when Anna opens the letter, there's a couple of tickets inside for her and her baby to leave Gotham and go to none other than Metropolis, departing one day before the events of the Batman movie, Wednesday, October 30th. Now, we've talked about Metropolis before in previous issues, but I have been asked to comment on this again over on Twitter. Little shameless plug there. Do go follow me there. I love to interact with you guys. Now, Metropolis, yes, does seem to exist in the canon of the Batverse as we see it once again on this ticket. And I see absolutely no reason, just to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, as to why it shouldn't exist. And by extension there, of course, you could, if you want to put some fangoggles on, speculate if Superman exists or not. And I say it like that because obviously you can still have a universe, I guess something like Christopher Nolan's Batman universe with Gotham there and other neighboring cities like Metropolis, but without any other metahumans out there. So that's what I mean. You can speculate that there is a Superman, or you could speculate that maybe there isn't. Matt Reeves has said himself that it's not impossible that somewhere down the line it could connect to something else, but that's not his interest in this, and not his interest in what he would do with follow-ups at the moment either. So that means follow-up main movies, follow-up projects, if you will, like, you know, shows like Penguin, Arkham, and whatnot. And he did say that he wanted to make everything feel very believable, the practical, believable version. So if suddenly in the Batman world you discovered there was an alien that was Superman, as Matt Reeves goes on to say, there would be a lot of shock. And he goes on to say that is not the intention at this point to figure out how to make that come. So all in all, for those who always ask me to acknowledge Metropolis, seeing Metropolis in this comic book as a destination that Anna is going to, it's like, yeah, the city is there and it's real and it's cool low-key world building, but my opinion and my bottom line on this is that 5 to 7 years from now, when the Batman 3 is hopefully coming out and we've had a few spin-off projects by then, there'd still be no real acknowledgement of a Superman or fantastical metahumans out there from everything that Matt Reeves has described. Now back to the panels. As the issue continues, there's also a note with a single word saying computer, in where he wants to talk with Anna again like he did back in issue 3. Riddler says to her that these are her tickets out of here, and she's insistent, just like before, that they will come after her, but Riddler tells her that they won't. October 30th will be your last day at work. You will receive a package, follow instructions, then go to the train. And this is where things get very interesting, just because I am so obsessed to get our first proper deep dive into this place, and we are kind of meant to be getting that with an Arkham Asylum spin-off series. And this is because we cut to Edward talking about his mother, and something that I found extremely cool here is that we get quite a outside perspective, an outside look of what Arkham Asylum looks like. Now, we have only seen the interior of Arkham within the Batman movie. We didn't see Batman drive up to it. We didn't see him walk through the gate. We've seen the interrogation room, and actually we've seen the cells at the end, like the kind of cell block where Riddler and Joker and God knows who else are staying. But here you can see the city in the backdrop there, the walls and the gate at the front as Arkham Asylum just towers over everything in the background. As Matt Reeves said, it's as if it's a haunted house that is Arkham. Now, one thing I do want to make clear here, and I know people will debate this and saying it's a canonical comic, so no matter what, it is canon and it will look this way. I have to say this from experience with other canonical comics, that yes, this comic is canon. Everything we've seen from Riddler working at KTMJ, his boss there, Zach in the office, Anna, him helping her go to Metropolis, all of this stuff. Everything, like him breaking into Gotham Mountain security, finally stumbling across Renewal, and, you know, that really springboarded him into his Judgment Day plan. I'm not saying all of these events don't happen, but when it comes to certain things like this, the visual look of the outside of Arkham, even though this is canon, it's the kind of thing that's canon until they actually do scout the location for the live action show or its appearance in a future movie, and then it kind of looks a little bit different. Do you know what I mean there? I think that is fair to say. I know people, as I said, will come back to me and say, no, this is exactly how it looks. And I can't really argue with that, but just kind of wait until it does kind of look a teeny tiny bit different, or maybe quite different, when we do see the actual front gate. Maybe there won't be a little logo and an eye there. Maybe it will be shaped a little bit differently. Maybe it'll be a lot broader and wider. Maybe it won't look like it's on this kind of hilltop above the city, so to speak. Now, Matt Reeves, of course, has endorsed this project, and yes, it is canon. I do want to say that it is canon, and I would love to think behind the scenes that maybe they had a conversation with Matt Reeves and said, okay, are you happy with this is maybe how it looks? I don't know if he would have had that much involvement, but that's because I really don't think it's that deep. Again, everything that we've read, all the series of events that happen in this prequel story are canon, but something like this, the visual design of Arkham, might not look the way it will in the Arkham Asylum spin-off show, and if we see the exterior of it in a movie, which I bloody hope we do see. I think I want nothing more than see Pattinson's Batmobile do the kind of, you know, drive up the wind, up the hill. And if it did look like something like what we're seeing right here on the hill and everything like that, I would be very happy with that. But for all intents and purposes, this is what we've got so far, and this is the canon. So this is the way it looks for now. And at this point in the issue, it's kind of like Edward is casing the place out, because we know he plans to end up there, of course, with Batman. And even though we know this is a place literally used for the criminally insane to house them, it looks as though there's a tour happening of Arkham Asylum, which is pretty nuts, but I do address it in just a second. So we can see this big group of people here are following this guide, and he talks about how this is the oldest part of the hospital and the first to be used by Amadeus Arkham himself. People were then asking, is this where he went crazy? Have you ever seen his ghost? And as per the source material, Amadeus Arkham is quite a known figure from the Arkham family. After all, he discovered, or should I say founded, Arkham Asylum. So if you're not so familiar, long story short, and I'm sure a lot of you are, but just to say it anyway, Amadeus Arkham's mother was very, very mentally ill, and after she died, of which he assisted her with, he converted the Mercy Mansion into Arkham Asylum and moved in there with his wife and child. And let's just say that he wasn't the most stable guy anyway, but what happens to him is extremely horrific. I think if I remember correctly, a patient from another place ended up breaking into the Arkham family quarters of the asylum and horrifically murdered his wife and child. And it's very detailed if you want to get into kind of what happened there, which I'm not going to do for demonetization reasons. But let's just say, as you can gather, he lost his sanity and became a serial killer and ended up in the very place that he built. So what I love about this is, and again, I do need to stress, even though this comic is canon, it doesn't mean that this is going to be so deeply endorsed and looked into in the live action. but we are meant to be getting an Arkham Asylum spin-off show. I do think it will be primarily set in present day, or like around the time of the Batman or post Batman when Joker and Riddler had that conversation. But I've spoke about many ideas and how I think it could be anthology-esque. You explore it with like a janitor one episode, you explore it with a doctor, some other staff, maybe even a patient at one point interacting with other patients, and there's this overarching plot that happens where all the stories converge to this maybe breakout moment or something like that. But what could be really cool is if in some of those episodes the story of Amadeus Arkham is weaved in there, or maybe they could even do an intro to the first episode that kind of goes over the context and extensive history of Arkham. I think that would be really cool. I'm probably reaching because, you know, I'm probably getting overexcited that, oh my god, look, there's technically a canon Arkham Asylum being explored in a prequel Riddler Year One novel to the Batman, so will this really be explored? I don't know, but here's the hoping, right? Because we are getting an Arkham show. But just to dive into what I love about them talking about Amadeus Arkham here, just a little bit more, because therefore it truly is, as Matt Reeves describes, this haunted house, because it quite literally was a former somewhat haunted house, a former mansion that was converted into an asylum with a very cursed and haunted past, which just makes it a much creepier place for people like Batman's Rogues Gallery and Joker, among other serial killers, to end up in. Now, as these scenes are unfolding, as Edward is on his little tour, if you will, we also have him narrating to himself, and he goes on to say, "Dear mother, why did you leave me? And why did they take you here? They put you with the crazies, with the criminally insane. Were you? Did they do it? Or did you?" And I like how we don't quite know what Edward Nashton's mother did, but it seems like he's done his research. Even though he was an orphan, he's looked into her and he's found her records, and she got committed to a place for the criminally insane. So what I kind of like here as well, and this is probably me reaching as well, is that you know, I remember there being parallels made with how Bruce, you know, and you can argue you're not exactly the most mentally sane person to go around dressed like a bat in Gotham, and you know, there's a lot of psychology you can get into with Batman. That's actually a great storyline of Matt Tomlin's most recent Batman the Imposter, with Leslie Tompkins being like, you're gonna have to prove that you're not insane. So we knew that Martha spent some time at Arkham Asylum, as well as another parallel here between Bruce and Edward Nashton, the Riddler. So did Edward's mother. So maybe Edward's mother and Martha knew each other. But that is really reaching, but you never know. Now Edward continues, "I will come home for a different reason, mother. The Ark will be our life raft. We will watch the rats drown, their little feet flailing as they sink. When it's safe, he and I will break out together, and we will walk into a better world." I like how, because his mum ended up in Arkham, he's kind of calling it home, but I also like how he's obviously talking about him and Batman here. As these panels unfold, he daydreams of Batman being there. The guide talks about the maximum security wing, only specially authorized hospital employees are allowed there, or Batman, I guess, and I guess this is exactly where Joker is chilling out during the events of the movie. Now, a kid on tour asks, why are we allowed to tour this place if it's so dangerous? And another guest points out, it's because they're broke. This city will do anything for $1. And that is just like really, really messed up if you think about it. I mean, I know Arkham in the film looked pretty old and brutal and just kind of cold. It didn't look archaic, but it looked very cold. But I hadn't thought so much into how, just like how the Waynes changed and donated their Wayne Manor into the Gotham City orphanage that Edward Nashton stayed in during his childhood, and it was still a really terrible experience with rats there and babies dying in the winter. You can only then, in theory, imagine the state of Arkham Asylum. And speaking of, as I'm literally looking at the panels now, speaking of the Waynes, we have a guide introduce everyone to the medical wing, and he states that in the 20th century, the Wayne family donated money to help upgrade certain facilities, as the original rooms were deemed inhumane. And what I like about this next moment, with how they look currently, a guest looks around and says this is their idea of humane. So even though they've been upgraded quite a while ago, I guess, whatever they're like right now when Riddler goes there and Joker, and from what we've seen in the movie, it is not exactly what the public would think of as humane. So again, the potential of this Arkham series, just with all of this tone and, you know, imagination of maybe some of the areas that they're looking around right now in the comic, I'm never going to stop simping for the potential of this series. The artwork, yeah, I need to say, by Stevan Subic, absolutely phenomenal stuff. Really brings out the mood of Matt Reeves' Gotham in a way that is clearly getting me electrified for what could be coming in the future with locations like this. But let's go back to those final words from the Riddler, and where he says, "When it's safe, he and I will break out together, and we will walk into a better world." Even though it didn't end that way for him, as he says in the movie, we were going to be safe here, we could watch the whole thing together. But now he has a new friend, and that is Joker. And he's reminded that Gotham loves a comeback story. So the original plan is likely very much so in place. Again, in this canon comic, he said he and I will break out together. They were only meant to stay in Arkham for potentially a short stay of time, and then they break out. But since Batman's not going to do that with him, he's going to do that with someone else. So I'm not saying this gives mad credence to, oh, this means that Joker and Riddler are clearly going to be the Batman Part 3's villain after the Arkham show shows their breakout in the final episode. I'm just saying I do kind of feel like things might be floating that way. We're just going to have to wait and see. And if it doesn't, that doesn't really negate the plan. It just means that in headcanon, at some point in the future of this story that we wouldn't get movies of, Riddler would break out again, as per his original plan, if you get what I'm saying. But I do think we are going to see the Joker and Riddler in some way bring his original plan to fruition. It's a shame it's not with the person he thought who would be his best friend. And probably our best look at Arkham here is from the front. Now, I may have shown the image already, but this is where I'm at on my screen here. And we get a real good look at the front of it. And I know people are going to read into what's in the corner there. I know, there's two owls, okay? I get it. But I just need to remind you, the fact that they're in this comic, and I know it's a canon comic, it doesn't automatically mean that the Court of Owls are going to be Part 3's villains, like, straight up. I hate to be a party pooper, but, you know, fan goggles wise, I do completely acknowledge this. It would have been done with subtle intention. Do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, you know, owls, they could be there, but Batman fans know what owls in Gotham City symbolize. And so I give you complete permission to fan out with some theories there, because, you know, why not? And theoretically, they could exist. It's just I'm not convinced right now that in this trilogy we're going to explore the Court of Owls, as I've gone on about many times before. So this is when we pick up on
Thursday.
No, not October 31st, but 24th. 1 week until I unmask the truth. What we see here is the Riddler doing his final touches as we see him spy on the mayor, the commissioner, the DA, clearly, and obviously the victims in the movie. We see people dealing drops, the effect it has on citizens, the crime, and then we get a whole double page of the Batman fighting crime. I have followed your work as closely as I can. A man alone against the city. I have tried to reach you, but all previous methods fail. Now, when we see him say that, we see these panels of the Batman finding what seems to be like a flag left in a plant pot with a bat logo on it. Maybe one of his methods of, you know, trying to reach him. Now, I believe these panels are still mainly just Riddler imagining scenes of Batman finding them. I believe that he may have put them out, but similar to how we get this shot here of Batman looking over the city. Like, all of this isn't necessarily us cutting to Batman out there in the city during the events of this comic. It's more like maybe a mix of that, but also Riddler's imagination. But to kind of back up what I'm saying here, notice how his grapple hook is very different from the mechanism that releases from the inside of his arm into his hand and actually shoots out. Here, it's literally a grappling hook that you need to kind of toss out there rather than, shooting it out. So what I can tell here is that it is clearly inspired from from the concept art for the film, because there is a shot that I may be showing on screen right now that is very similar and where he actually has kind of like a lasso-esque grapple hook. And I doubt he was actually using this method of grappling around the city only 1 week before the events of the film start. But it's a really nice touch to see this nonetheless. So as the Riddler is imagining all of this, he continues from what he said before, I've tried to reach you, but all previous methods fail until tomorrow when you will finally come. Who are you? Are you just like me? Could you be in some building close by, or in some warehouse across the river waiting for your light to hit the sky? Are you one of us? Would I know you if I saw you? When do you sleep? Will you be my friend? Am I awake or dreaming? Now, as he says this and he's imagining who he is and, tomorrow finally the day will come, clearly in the panels here you can see how he imagines that Batman will fairly easily find his real change map, with obviously pointing out the vans with the bombs in them by the seawall, of which, he doesn't exactly do that in the movie or find them until it's too late, causing Riddler to say, "Oh, you're really not as smart as I thought you were." Now, the wonder of the Batman to the Riddler here is pretty interesting in the ways where he says, "Are you like me?" And, we see the Riddler in the bat suit. Is he one of his followers in the chat room? So one of his goons that we see at the end of the movie? Regardless, all of these panels just emphasize the heartbreak Riddler experiences when Batman completely rejects him just a week later. Speaking of a week later, we're now almost at the night, October 30th, and we have the Riddler's chat getting all excited and that they can't sleep because the day is almost here. And we continue with Anna getting a package and letter from the Riddler, one containing some meat inside, telling her to go and feed in the back. Now, Anna makes her way below the New Beginnings animal rescue, throws the slab of meat on the floor, and escapes, leaving the door unlocked. Now, it turns out that Riddler put some sedatives in the meat to knock out, and I wrote here at the time, I was like, is this a dog? I don't know, but we find out, and if you've read this already, feed whatever it is in the basement, and it should take like 15 minutes, but he waits 20 minutes to be sure that whatever it is knocked out. So meanwhile, we see Anna leave Gotham with her baby. So technically, out of all of this bad, Riddler kind of did one good thing, but it still kind of feels like a consequence of what he plans to do and what he is doing right now towards the end of this issue, and who will kind of get screwed over as a result. But I do need to stress that it does show some empathy and something to Edward. And we know that Edward could have been different, especially from the flashbacks as well, but he got her tickets to leave as well. He didn't have to do that. Like, he could have still done everything at the end of this comic book with Anna still being left up in the air. He got her the tickets with her baby to go on that train to Metropolis. So that is, something to be noted. And as she leaves, the next page's panels open up on Thursday, October 31st. The city streets are crowded for the holiday. I mean, it doesn't really say that, but I wake up. I feel clear, strong, ready. My whole life has led me to this. And we even see that Edward gets to train. Like, this is what I kind of loved about the ending of this issue. This is the day of the very beginning of the movie. So we see him get the train to work as usual. We see him work his desk job at KTMJ. I can barely contain myself. My heart beats so loud, I wonder if the whole office can hear it. I sit here and I visualize every part of the plan, like tiny dominoes falling, unfolding like a magic trick. And as Edward says all of that, we get glimpses of the bloodied carpet tool. He's also imagining Pete Savage's face getting eaten by rats in the cage. I walk through the dream again and again, each time ironing out any wrinkles that may occur, until I can see it perfectly. Judgment Day is finally here. Now, I like how he looks over to Zach's office. Now, some of you may have forgot who Zach is, but he's a complete office douchebag. Edward does all the work. Zach gets promoted for it, that kind of thing. So he can't stand him. And he's on a dating website, and Edward says, "Can't waste time on mice, but I can make sure that they will be there to drown," that is, in the flooding. And so we see Zach match with this person called Maggie. But first of all, like, he sees like a little Riddler logo pop up and he's like, what the? And then it turns into Maggie. So it looks as though they're meeting exactly where they'll be hit by the floods, ensured by Edward, literally likely making this profile up. So when we were speculating who could die in this, would there be an actual murder hands-on by Edward in the prequel comic? And I kind of shied away from it towards the end because I was thinking, oh man, it could be a bit dodgy for him to do that before his great plan, his big plan, if you will. So there are things like this in where arguably other people could have died in a flood anyway. We actually don't really have a death count, but Zach could have been one of them. And if he did, well, A, it's Riddler's fault anyway for doing what he did, but he made sure that Zach was gonna be there. Speaking of kind of death number 2, if you will. So we see Mr. Higgins return back to the New Beginnings Animal Rescue, noticing that the water's been left on, and he goes in, the lights aren't working, he gets his phone out, uses the phone light, and he notices a note from the Riddler. Don't forget, what I love with my imagination here is that this is canonical to that day in the movie. So imagine like the movie had an extra 25 minutes or more, and this is what he did. He left a note there. This is what this guy, Mr. Higgins, was reading. And he says in the note, you know how Mr. Falcone gets rid of his bodies, don't you? And we finally get to see what was in the basement that Anna fed at the time and what Edward freed with his bolt cutters. And it's like a freaking crocodile. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's a crocodile. I could be wrong, but it's like, it's huge. And let's just say it ends up eating Mr. Higgins alive. Now, death number 3, going into this, Mr. Stone, the most popular fan theory of who might bite the dust. We cut to him getting called about a problem going down at New Beginnings Animal Rescue, right where Mr. Higgins just got eaten alive. And they're like, okay, the neighbors have seen this, you know, they see the flooding going on, and they called the cops. And Mr. Stone's immediately like, oh my god, like how much product was back there? This is going to be a bit of a headache to deal with. Now Mr. Stone's goon says, well, I don't really know, but we kind of got a bigger problem. Higgins is dead. It wasn't just flooding. There was like blood in the flooding coming out of the New Beginnings Animal Rescue. On top of this might mean that a shipment would have been missed, and somebody's gonna have to take the fall for that because Falcone, let's just say, makes examples out of people who may have missed a shipment or like screws up to this extent, because ultimately Mr. Stone oversees operations like this for Falcone. Which is when he goes to log into his computer and he's confronted with all of these pop-ups of all of the accounts that the Riddler discovered. But there is another pop-up that opened on his screen, a message box with the Riddler himself. The very one just like in how Batman was talking to him. Riddler sends a picture message of him and his family, each family member burned out, saying, what will they think? And then there's a voice message from the Riddler that Mr. Stone then goes on to play. And don't forget that Mr. Stone is his boss. Good evening, Mr. June. You are aware of what happens to people who take money from Mr. Falcone. So in the midst of all of this, Riddler gives Mr. Stone 2 options. Click here to send to your family, or click here to send to Mr. Falcone. And as the final panels of the issue unfold, we see Edward there. Like, as all of this is kind of like happening, right? He's still in the office, crossed-armed, and just getting ready to go. And I really like the way this is kind of all edited into this comic. It's kind of like a movie in where all of these scenes would be playing in conjunction with Riddler. Just, you know, it all cut back to the Riddler. You can almost imagine the cinematography getting closer and closer to where he sat there in his chair, the haunting music of the Riddler playing, or the crowning moment of how he's just about to get out there for the first time. And he narrates, starting off in a very similar way to Thomas Wayne's mayoral speech, I believe in Gotham. I believe in its promise. But too many have been left behind for too long. And that's why I am here today, to renew the promise of this city. And again, kind of imagine this with scenes going on in conjunction and cutting to different things at the same time. You have Riddler saying that, you have the narration, but then we cut back to Mr. Stone sometime later. He's now left a note for his family saying, I'm sorry, remember the man you knew, as he ends his own life. So again, directly because of what Riddler did, granted he didn't apply the carpet tool to Mr. Stone, his actions still caused Mr. Stone to die. Edward continues, tonight your light will shine for me. Tonight you will hear my call. Will you answer? See you soon. friend. And so the Riddler Year One ends with panels of the Riddler literally getting geared up to take out the mayor, fantasizing about finally meeting this absolute idol of his, meeting the Batman, as he knows his plan should lead the Batman to him, and it perfectly did. And this is when he puts cling wrap on his head, then the mask, and then the final shot is of him fully in Riddler attire, ready to go and take out Mayor Don Mitchell. Shh. Just breathe. And to end it off on those final words, something that is echoed throughout the whole time in this whole prequel comic journey, the whole, okay, just kind of saying to myself, you know, just breathe, barely being able to contain himself, and now he can finally do it. He just needs to clock back in with himself again. Let's go. Opening of the Batman begins. He's got the binoculars out, and then he creeps in, and there you have it. So that is it, guys. That is the end of the journey, and I have to say I really thoroughly enjoyed the journey overall, but this last issue, the ride right into the day of Thursday, October 31st, it was tremendous. Really appreciated absolutely everything that this prequel comic had to give us. So, you know, props to Paul Dano, the Riddler himself, for writing it. Major props to Stevan Subic for the, you know, haunting, chilling, you know, insidious, awesome, very Batman, Matt Reeves Batverse artwork that he gave us. You know, that really reflected the kind of spiral staircase that was the Riddler's mental decline to get to the point of where he was ready to do what he was doing for Judgment Day in the Batman movie. So guys, I think I'm going to end my ramble here. This is definitely the longest Riddler issue review I've done. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, especially if you got this far, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like. Maybe consider sharing it. Consider subscribing if you happen to be brand new. I do plan on doing future things like this with comics and whatnot, on top of like everything else that I do. But anyway, take care of yourself. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you, Bat Family, in the next video. Goodbye.